Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? Last talk of the day. Do we have energy? Yes? I see you guys. I see the smiles. All right, everyone. My name is Alina Zolotareva, and I'm the marketing director of a company called AeroFarms. By a show of hands, who here has heard of AeroFarms? Oh, wow. So I guess you guys, who wants to come up and give this presentation in my place? So I'm going to start with the opportunity. So we've been listening to some amazing speakers talk to us about the state of our planet, the state of our agriculture system globally. And it's really a huge opportunity for a variety of reasons. So I'm going to start with just some facts. So first and foremost, as Dr. Shapiro alluded to this morning, we are running out of arable land. So over the last 30 years or so, we've run out about 30% of our farmable land. Our global population is growing. So by 2050, we're set to have close to 10 billion people on the planet. So we're going to need approximately 60% more food to eat. And so we have tons of innovations in farming that are helping us get better yields. But what's happening is with less land and more mouths to feed, we're entering a bit of a pickle when it comes to that. Then we have the issues of fresh water. We've had some amazing panels on the state of our water systems and our fresh water here. And so many of you have already heard that we're running out of freshwater reserves. And 70% of fresh water actually goes to agriculture, to growing our food. And then 70% of our freshwater contamination is coming from all of the agricultural runoff, from the pesticides, the herbicides, the fungicides, et cetera. Agriculture is also very energy intensive. It takes a lot to produce all of the pesticides and the agrochemicals that go into growing our food, right? And so we're really straining our planet, and it's become quite problematic. In terms of the United States, where I live in New York City, where we're based in Newark, New Jersey, most of our vegetables, most of our leafy greens specifically, which is what I'll be focusing on today, comes from California, the Salinas Valley, or from Numa, Arizona. And what's happening there is that it has to be trucked thousands of miles from California to New York. And what's happening is that produce, the second that it's harvested, the second that it's cut off, it's losing nutritional value, it's losing quality, and it's losing flavor. And so fresh product really isn't meant to be trucked for thousands of miles and kept on a shelf. And along that supply chain, we're also running into food loss and food waste. Many of us have heard the statistic 40%. So 40% of all of our food goes to landfill, right? Producing methane emissions, et cetera. But along the leafy green supply chain in the United States, that number is close to 76%. So 76% net from seed to our plate goes into the trash. And that is a really sad statistic, especially for me as a registered dietitian, somebody who is really passionate about getting healthy food onto the plates of people. And so we really have a strained supply chain. And so when I share a little bit about AeroFarms and why we exist and why we do what we do, this is a really important framework to have. So at AeroFarms, we're all about a new way of farming. Something that I really want to make clear is that we're not here to replace agriculture. Vertical farming, controlled environment agriculture will never replace agriculture. What we're doing here is a different new way of farming that can complement our existing agricultural paradigm to do more with less and grow the types of crops that are really strained in our current system. So welcome to my office. This is our headquarter farm. It's in Newark, New Jersey. It's a 70,000 square foot facility, a former steel mill. So part of our mission, as I mentioned earlier, is really to do the most with the least. And one of those aspects is to rescue abandoned space. So within this 170,000 square foot footprint, which is about an acre of growing space, we can grow up to 390 acres worth of food in any given year. So a little bit about our system and kind of how we grow what we grow. So the term controlled environment agriculture means exactly what it sounds like. So we are controlling every aspect of the inputs, from the temperature to the humidity, to the nutrients that we are deploying to the root system, et cetera. And by doing this, we're able to use a fraction of the fertilizer, 95% less water than field farming, and we can grow the same crops in a fraction of the time. So what's typically grown out in the field 35 to 45 days, we can grow in 12 to 16 days. So we have about up to 30 crop turns per year for the same baby leafy greens and herbs products, which is really unprecedented. So at this farm, AeroFarms, the farming technology, we can grow any crop. So we have 5 total sites in Newark. One of those sites is a research and development facility for plants. One of those is an engineering facility where we're really working on automation, AI, machine learning, and kind of bringing all of those elements together. But what we really focus on commercially is short stem leafy greens and herbs for the reasons that I explained earlier, because of the challenges in that supply chain, because of the growing demand for baby leafy greens and for nutritious, fresh product. And there's a huge trend, especially in New York City, around local production and really honoring local farming and having food that's as close to your plate as possible from the time that it was harvested. What's really amazing also about what we do at AeroFarms is that we're really community focused. And so from the beginning, we're a B corporation, and from the beginning, we really wanted to honor the local community and bring them in to be a part of our journey and to be a part of our operations. So we have a huge commitment to hiring locally. And Newark, New Jersey is a city that, everyone thinks New York City, why didn't you build in New York City? But Newark is just 10 miles away from New York, and it's a city that was struck with economic problems for many, many decades. And so we really wanted to go in and make as big of an impact as possible. So we hire 80% of our workforce is hired locally, and we're really, really proud of that. So at AeroFarms, just to reiterate our mission here, we're on a mission to grow the best plants possible for the betterment of humanity. And as I mentioned, we're a B corporation, so that mission is folded into absolutely everything that we do, every single element, from the design of the operation, the closed loop nature of how we grow, to our hiring practices, to our company culture. Absolutely everything comes together. And we've been really lucky to be recognized for this work over the last couple of years. We were one of Fast Company's most innovative in a row for 2 years in a row, last year for food and this year for data science. But I just want to emphasize that this company's been around since 2004. We've been on this journey for a very, very long time. Our chief science officer and co-founder, who was the inventor of AeroFarms 1.0, he started this in Ithaca, New York, in his basement, essentially, in 2004, and has been plugging away to really perfect this technology. And so we've really been on a journey towards vertical farming for a very, very long time. Rome wasn't built in a day. This industry now today is so booming and has so much innovation and excitement, but it really wasn't built in a day. So I'm going to zoom through the next couple of slides just for time's sake. But again, what we do at AeroFarms, it's not as simple as planting seeds on a cloth, putting them through and growing plants. It's really a combination of a variety of different disciplines and sets of expertise. So we have mechanical engineers, we have plant scientists, data scientists. I'm a registered dietitian and a marketer, so we come together as a team, and it's really a complex system, and how all of these different pieces come together to grow the best possible plants and to really understand them inside out. Again, so we learned a little bit today and in some of the sessions about AI and machine learning and data integration. And so we're a food company and we are a farming company, but we're also a data science company and a technology company. So it's really, really important for us to understand plants in a way that it has never been understood. So we track them. Every single plant for us is a data point, and we track them from seed to plate. And so that means every input is measured, and then all of that learning is then put back into the system so that we can have an even better crop next time. And what's really cool is that we have 30 opportunities every year to do that. So we're constantly learning and constantly improving. So again, 24/7 monitoring, something that's unprecedented in the field. So this is just a visual to show you how we look at red romaine lettuce and how it grows in our system. Something I didn't mention, we use the same seeds that farmers use out in the field. We're not using GMO seeds. It's the same exact seeds. All we're doing is we're controlling that environment. We're perfecting that environment. And so the other thing that's amazing is we don't have to use any pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides. So because we're able to really control that environment and have full control, we don't need those inputs. And our consumers don't want that. Nobody wants that. And it also means that we get to do better by the planet. So as a dietitian, the first question that I asked before working at AeroFarms around 4.5 years ago was, show me the nutrition analysis. There's a lot of talk that indoor grown products, things that are not grown in the soil, do not have that nutrient density, and that's frankly not true. So for us at AeroFarms, because we can control those inputs, our nutrient density can be even better than field-grown produce. So here, for example, is an example of arugula leaf. We can have over 100% more vitamin A, over 250% more vitamin C in terms of the daily values. And again, it's about celebrating flavor. At the end of the day, it's got to taste great. The product has to be fresh. It's got to be interesting. What we really care about at AeroFarms is biodiversity. We've grown close to 1,000 varieties of leafy green vegetables alone in the last year. And that's incredible, because today when we go to the store, we only have a small variety of plants, a small variety of leafy greens that we can really enjoy. We're losing out on biodiversity every single year with what's happening with climate change and with the issues that we have environmentally. And so for us to be able to really control that environment and provide the exact environment that each plant needs, we can bring back heirloom varieties. We can grow just about anything. And that's extremely exciting from a flavor standpoint, from a culinary standpoint, and from a nutrition standpoint. So we work with some really amazing top chefs like Marcus Samuelson, like David Chang, who's one of our investors. And I'm going to end with a video, if it works.
Who would have thought you could grow a plant in a warehouse instead of a field? Without sun, without soil. We're doing it, and we're not only doing it on an experimental level, we're doing it on a commercial level. Today we focus on leafy greens. We believe we could grow anything. Our vision is to build farms in cities all over the world to allow everyone to have access to fresh, great tasting, healthy food all year round. The fact that we could grow plants using 95% less water, 0 pesticides, as much as 390 times the productivity per square foot as a field farmer shows what technology can do. We're able to understand the plants better than anyone ever in the history of farming, and it's by the data. And this is why the relationship with Dell Technologies is so valuable. We are collecting all of these data points of what we're giving the plant. What spectrum of light, what nutrients, how do we improve quality, taste, texture? We're using data analytics and becoming better farmers. At the end of the day, it's about how do we deliver a better product to the customer.
This is AeroFarms baby kale. This is going to be packed the flavor of kale. The watercress had those peppery notes. The bok choy is super juicy. This is what I love about AeroFarms, is that it's like technology that's allowing people to farm better and smarter, and it makes really delicious food.
The world needs a new paradigm of how we're going to feed this planet. AeroFarms is illustrative of what technology can do to provide more with less.
Thanks to Dell for that video. Thank you, everyone.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marc from Biofilter, and what you're going to see here is probably almost the polar opposite of the high-tech farming system, and which is a really good bookend for what people pioneering in the vertical farming space are doing, like AeroFarms. So, in a sense, we're doing controlled agriculture as well, but it's soil-based. So we're taking a distinctive low-tech approach to urban farming, outdoors and probably not indoors. And it's about getting things accessible for people in the broader spectrum of plant-based growing. A survey of over 1,400 people, why don't people grow veggies at home? Well, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough space, it's just not convenient, and I just don't really think I have the expertise. Well, I can tell you that we are making gardening for dummies, okay? My mum could kill plastic plants, and now she is a champion urban farmer with our system. So traditional farming, soil-based, water from the top, grow plants, they soak up nutrients, that has got us through 10,000 years. So it's done a pretty good job of getting us to the level that we are now. But it's weed intensive, it's water intensive, and there's a lot of labour involved. So there's a lot of barriers to being a good urban farmer. Who's tried to grow veggies at home and failed because they just get stressed out in water? Anybody? Okay, I haven't got that much time. All right. So quite a few of you have. And what we've done is we've looked at wicking garden beds. We've looked at modularised wicking garden beds and reimagining the wicking garden bed, watering from the bottom up, and giving plants exactly what they need as they need it through a natural capillary action. Who's put a dishcloth in water and watch it rise up? Well, that's what we're doing with a fibrous wicking mix and delivering water to plants. So it's really about getting soil-based systems so you can close your own nutrient loops at home, composting, and using those nutrients to grow more food rather than getting them to go out in a one-way street to the environment in landfill. We won a Global Food Challenge in 2017 from a worldwide search. That's how we met Henry. Alina, that's where we met him from in San Francisco. We've been doing vertical urban farming. This was a pop-up farm we did in Port Melbourne here. And we took over 130 kilos out of that wall there and putting vertical farming, soil-based systems. We do school gardens, wicking system, modular systems, just making gardening easy for schools. And the only kid there with his fly undone happens to be my youngest son, so that was at his school. But they're learning how to grow food, and their kids are getting connected with their food again. And in a generation with urban sprawl, people are losing their connection with how to grow food, and that's a tragedy. So we're trying to find ways to make it easy, to close the loop and get people to grow food. So we set ourselves a goal of how much food do I need, how much space do I need to keep myself healthy for a year. The World Health Organization says that we have to have 150 kilos of food per annum, veggies. Now, only 5% of Australians get to that point. Most of us chomp through 75 kilos worth of veggies per annum. So we set up a car park, a 2-car park space garden in Port Melbourne. A couple of employees had to ride their bikes to work, so they're much healthier too. But they gave up their car park and we put an urban farm in there. And there's our target. We said in November last year, we want to grow 150 kilos. That's what the World Health Organization says we should grow. We put up an urban farm with our self-watering wicking garden beds, and we measured everything. We weighed it, we measured it, we compared it, and in that space, as of today, we've taken 365 kilos worth of food out of 2 car parks since November last year. So not even in a year have we grown enough food to exceed what the World Health Organization says that we need to live. So we're demonstrating this closed farming system in Tuvalu, where salt water comes out the ground. So our sealed system is a really good thing to help people close their nutrient loops, grow food where food hasn't come very easy to grow because salt water comes out the ground. Water collection on an island is very, very difficult. The ground is very high pH. And here we see good examples of urban farming in an atoll where there's no actual topsoil, and it just makes gardening very, very hard. So we implemented our raised, perched, sealed systems and we're getting fantastic results where people can compost, use pig waste, use local inputs to close nutrient loops and grow food. And every 4 weeks we can grow a Chinese cabbage, which is a main staple of green sources of food over there. You can see here before and after urban farming systems, rapidly deployed, scalable, modular and very water efficient. Some of these gardening systems haven't had water added for 26 weeks because the system itself stores water and then gives it to the plants for weeks afterwards. Home scale, community scale, urban food growing. We learned a lot deploying these. We learned a lot that you can do a lot more with the resources we have on atoll. So if we can go to the middle of the Pacific, 1,000 k's north of Fiji, and find out how to do closed-loop urban farming there, I tell you what, we can do it anywhere in the world. Not everything goes to plan, folks, when you implement urban farming. If you don't put the right soil in, if you just put something that's really scratchy and horrible, it won't grow. So you need to get your soil right, even though we think we've got the world's best urban weekend garden bed system. It's not magic. Lots of good learnings there. I'm going to keep going because we're running out of time. But we've invested heavily to rapidly make modular garden systems with a recycled chip packet film source material that was going to go to landfill. So we intercept that, we reprocess that, and we make them in this square metre module called the Food Cube. I'm very proud of the fact that when you get a Food Cube product, there's absolutely no waste packaging. No point getting a sustainable product, and then you've got to throw all these things, all this packaging in the bin. So that's how it comes right across the world, and we can grow really great urban farms. We're doing it for schools. This school here, whatever you can have in your hands $1. So the parents at the end of the day grow really large hands because whatever's $1. And this school then self-funds their whole garden system. We're imagining how you can do this at the home scale, on a rooftop scale with food closing a nutrient loop, and we're about to activate Melbourne's largest urban rooftop farm called the Melbourne Skyfarm very soon. So we're up there in the next couple of months to start growing food, 5 tonnes worth of food for Melbourne's charities. And we'd really like to get school farms involved. Having closed loop urban farms, and I think we can all do more in less space, and that's what this panel is really talking to you about today, whether it's vertical farming, whether it's soil-based, whether it's any other. It's doing more with what we've got in less space. Thank you very much.
Excellent presentation. I have to apologise in advance. A little bit of a technical difficulty, so my beautiful presentation hasn't made it to us today. Nonetheless, I'd like to begin by setting the scene. The reality that we're facing, of course, is that the accumulating effects of population growth and the impact of climate change on food systems and agriculture has resulted in a food security and nutrition crisis the world over. This crisis is reducing the availability and increasing the cost of food, making it prohibitively expensive for people living in poverty, and in turn driving malnutrition and the proliferation of disease. This is today the experience of 2 billion people. A nutritious diet is, of course, the foundation for a healthier life, and unless less drastic measures are taken to remedy the crisis, we will see further deterioration of health and broad economic impacts as a result. What most don't know is that hunger affects women more than men at a rate of 60-40, and thus it has ramifications on the health of newborn babies, extending from cognitive impairments to stunted growth. The experience of food scarcity in low-income countries is 20% higher than middle-income countries, and it is directly correlated to economic downturns, conflict, and climate shocks. The extremely fragile state of the world economy and current geopolitical tensions could easily turn into a food war where produce becomes our most valuable commodity unless food security and food security for individual communities is provided through localised production. My name is Kelly McJannett, and I am the CEO and co-founder of non-profit organisation Food Ladder. Founded in 2008, Food Ladder is the world's first not-for-profit organisation using hydroponic and environmentally sustainable food-growing technologies to create food and economic security for communities otherwise reliant on aid and entrenched in poverty. Simply, we use custom-designed commercial food-growing systems to provide nutrient-rich produce around the world, from rural towns in India, Uganda, to the most remote parts of the Northern Territory in East Arnhem Land, and most recently, we launched in Bhutan. Providing food security, education, training, employment, and more for children and adults. In the developing world, technical innovation in food production has disenfranchised much traditional agricultural practice. But the benefits achieved through innovation have not been extended to those who are suffering, and quite simply, feeding the rich has rendered the poor even hungrier. For every country, of course, the experience of food security and nutrition is nuanced and devastating. In Australia, it is, of course, our Indigenous population who feel its effects most acutely. In 2009, the Closing the Gap report stated that First Nation people continue to die on average 10 to 17 years earlier than non-Indigenous Australians. For a first world country, this is simply not acceptable. Nutrition has been cited as the key contributor in preventable health challenges, and yet 22% of Indigenous people report not having enough food to eat. Colonisation has meant that remote Indigenous communities have no choice but to procure food and vegetables, often from the stores where food has been freighted thousands of kilometres, reducing quality and driving up cost. In Africa, where we also work, 20% of the continent's population reported being undernourished in 2018. And despite African nations adopting the Sustainable Development Goals, political agenda is not translating into nourishment for African people. This is compounded by a reliance on foreign aid, which is monopolised and will become jeopardised in the case of a global downturn, throwing those now on the brink into grave peril. Despite progress in China, the relative size of the population means that the number of individuals impacted amounts to over 150 million. I speak frequently about my work addressing this challenge in my capacity as the CEO of Food Ladder. Our approach has been to roll out locally owned social enterprises leveraging this technology for 10 years. However, in the past 12 months, the number of people who did not have enough food to eat has increased by 20 million, totalling 280 million people the world over. There simply are not enough resources in any one organisation or institution to address the issue. I believe the next step is to empower the billions of people facing food security challenges to take control of their own future through a free Food Ladder mobile app built for Android and iOS, which would cater specifically for rural and remote communities and emerging technologies where mobile phones are often more prevalent than fresh water, if you can believe it. As the saying goes, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. By implementing Food Ladder systems, communities restructure their food supply chain, shifting from towns that were geographically vulnerable and food insecure to self-sufficient neighbourhoods with food sovereignty, a process which can be replicated across all of remote Australia and the world. When a community establishes a Food Ladder system, they combat entrenched poverty on their terms by investing in nutrition and teaching children and adults about the importance of healthy eating. Good nutrition is the catalyst for healthy change. Healthy diets reduce mortality. They boost attendance and retention rates at schools and in turn lead to improved job prospects and employment. There are also broad economic benefits from ensuring nutrition for our young people, including lower medical costs, high productivity, improved quality of life, and increased life expectancy. We know without doubt that malnutrition is at the core of all impoverished communities, and here at Food Ladder, we believe that we are part of the solution to address that crisis. Thank you very much for your time, and I would now like to introduce Serena Lee from Farmwall.
All the short people in the room know what this feels like. Good afternoon, everyone. I want you to imagine a city that is a food-producing ecosystem. That every skyscraper and office building in the CBD is responsible for producing its own food and giving back to the environment as well as the community. That an office tower would have access to nutritious produce that they could harvest throughout the day and take home to their families as well. Imagine if indoor vertical farms growing produce could replace the huge decorative green walls that we see everywhere in lobbies and client spaces. There would be no need for extensive supply chains and multiple stages of food handling, as urban farmers would be delivering produce from indoor farms all over the city, creating low food miles, eliminating packaging waste, storage costs, and boosting nutrition as well. Well, what if I told you that that vision is already here and that it's growing and that ag-tech startup Farmwall is leading the way and we're teaming up with some of the biggest players in the country to really make this happen? We design indoor vertical farming systems that grow microgreens using aquaponics, and we scale this down to a 2-meter-tall urban vertical farm. Our Farmwall units combine nature and technology, and it creates a beautiful representation of a live ecosystem where plants and fish live in symbiosis with one another. Farmwalls are on display for hospitality, workplaces, and schools, and they're leased like a vending machine for nutritious microgreens. They're maintained and stocked with a monthly subscription model. So we also design urban farms that create value for underutilized spaces, and we deliver this through an experience and education model. We train city workers to become urban farmers. We started this business with a mission to transform cities into food-producing ecosystems, because we want to live in a world where cities feed our planet. So when we look at the value of urban farming as a whole, it's really broken down into 3 key pillars. It's necessary in order to future-proof our environment, to future-proof our cities, and to future-proof ourselves as well. So I'm sure everyone here knows that the world population is currently sitting at 7.7 billion. What is also alarming is that 55% of those people live in cities. And this rising city residing demographic is not exactly at peak mental health either. These numbers are both rising exponentially, and it's rising at a rate that we're certainly not prepared for. From an infrastructure perspective, our buildings will keep getting taller and our transport more efficient and our urban sprawl more expansive. But what about all of our green spaces, and what's the plan for that? How can our behavior and attitudes around this shape these outcomes as well? I want to introduce you to a concept called biophilia. It's a hypothesis that was first popularized in the 80s by Dr. Edward Wilson, and it essentially describes the urge to affiliate with other forms of life, nature in particular. It's the love for living things which comes from a psychological attraction to elements that are alive and vital for our humanity. It's the scientific explanation of our connection with nature, and this is something that's rooted into our biology. But recently, we've neglected this human need, and in return, more than ever before, as urbanites, we're experiencing increasing numbers of loneliness, anxiety, stress, depression, and isolation. Biophilia in action is the understanding that being surrounded by nature has incredible positive effects on our mental health. And it comes down to the chemicals and the pheromones that are being communicated to us unconsciously. It's kind of like when a mother is holding a newborn baby and she picks up this particular kind of scent that smells really good to her, but that no one else smells. It's actually a pheromone that the baby releases so that the mother won't abandon the baby. Puppies and kittens do this as well. A lot of baby animals do. It's something that's rooted into our biology to give us an attraction to something. So it's a strange metaphor to make, but when you really think about it, it makes sense because plants do this as well. They provide oxygen for us and all sorts of other benefits as a way of saying, hey, I'm really good for you and I've got all these incredible benefits. Please don't kill me and please keep growing more of me. But this acknowledgement is going to take a lot of time to make that connection than convincing people not to abandon babies because we are just so far disconnected with the origins of our food and we don't even realize how many problems can actually be solved through bringing farming back into our cities and back into our lives on a daily basis. So in order to do this and for this movement to thrive, we need to tap into the minds of individuals and businesses on a much deeper level than just growing produce. We need a shift in mentality to occur, and we need to change attitudes around the role that urban farming can play for ourselves and for businesses as well, not just exclusively to the very well-known benefits that it has to the environment. Because at the end of the day, we're all very aware of the challenges that are right in front of us due to climate crisis, but our heads are still very much in the sand when it comes to making the right decision. However, one of our specialties that we are really good at is making consumer decisions that really fulfill the self and the self-need and the need to satisfy those needs within our own bodies, which are effectively our own ecosystems of the body and the mind. So we need to really be tapping into this growing market of discerning millennials that want to make the right choices for the environment, but first themselves. Because we need to start selling the evidence of what I like to call the non-tangibles of urban farming. All of the stuff that you can't see, that is not just the produce. So the evidence that we have found are as follows. We've got a sense of physical belonging in an increasingly digitized and detached world, an urban oasis to retreat to from the office and spend time with nature, mental health benefits such as reduced stress, improved emotional health, and increased cognitive stimulation. And these values, they need to be realized, and we need to start getting commercial buy-in so that these urban communities who need it the most can benefit from them. Occupying land in the cities, as everyone knows, really expensive, and while we can drive a lot of revenue from cash crops such as microgreens, other revenue streams need to be realized from all the other associated benefits of urban farming so that we can really scale this on a wild scale across the globe. So through the work that we're doing with a large Australian real estate group, we're also realizing the many ways that urban farms and indoor vertical ag can add to properties as well. So we found that it can aid with attracting new generation talent. It can boost tenant satisfaction and engagement levels. It can provide a building with a unique service, creating a valuable point of difference. It can boost brand equity and meet sustainability goals. And it can also create rental income in an unlettable tenancy. So I want to share something with you that's a really interesting example of these outcomes actually happening in practice. About 6 months ago, Farmwall installed a pop-up urban farm and multiple Farmwall units into Westpac's headquarters in Sydney. And in collaboration with Mirvac, we found a tenancy that had been vacant for 18 months due to surrounding construction. We transformed this 250 square meter space into an urban farm that showcased aquaponics, hydroponics, aeroponics, and even mushrooms. And the variety of agricultural technologies decorated the entire space while leaving the centre available for a mini cafe, for co-working, venue hire, educational workshops, and even yoga and meditation, all the ways that we could activate the space to bring more people in. So through delivering this experience and exposing thousands of people to our farm walls and urban agriculture, we saw an 86% increase in mood, a 64% reduction in stress levels, and 98% of people rating their experience as very good or great, and that same 98% of people learning something new about how they can grow food at home or in the city. We received comments like, this project is essential for helping cities be connected with where their food comes from, reducing the carbon footprint of food production, and create great community spaces that make cities more livable. And my personal favorite, which is, if this is what the future looks like, then I'm okay with it. So in order for our cities to integrate urban agriculture into the planning and design, we really have to think more broadly about what urban farms and indoor ag look like, and the varying value propositions that are going to be able to get this through the line. We need businesses to be more bold and brave and let us show them just how much of a positive impact we can have on their organizations as well as individual employees. And we have to imagine the community garden of the future and how we can make better use of all of our vertical space. So we take a technology-based approach towards urban food production, and we allow that to be on display so that we as urbanites can reap the benefits of urban food production embedded into our lives, and we can bring a new sense of biophilia into our modern world. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Dr. Cathryn O'Sullivan from the CSIRO to give the final presentation of this session. Thanks.
Thanks, Serena, and thanks everyone for sticking with us to the end of the day. We've heard from 4 really diverse enterprises, so I hope I can round this out by refocusing things a bit to look specifically at the role that researchers can play in helping urban and controlled environment agriculture as it scales. And hopefully I can touch on aspects that are relevant to all these different technology types and deliveries to different communities. So at CSIRO and also a lot of the universities around Australia and a lot of the state departments, we have traditionally used a lot of controlled environment technology, but it's been focused on answering questions for field and broadacre farmers. So we've used glasshouses and growth rooms and growth cabinets and imaging technologies to, for example, impose a drought where a drought may not have been seen, so that we can control all aspects except the one variable that we want to alter. And we're starting to shift our attention now because we've realised that we could be using the same technologies and the same research techniques to specifically address questions for controlled environment agriculture. It just requires a shift in research question rather than a shift in approach. So what I want to talk you through today are my top 5 research questions for the controlled environment agriculture industry. Now, I should say that this is by no means an exhaustive list, and it's possibly also biased by my own background. I could get another researcher up from our phenomics group who might have a completely different set of 5 questions, but this is my top 5 that I'd like to see addressed to move the industry forward. Number 1, increasing crop diversity. Now, we've seen some beautiful images today, and we've heard a lot of data about the potential for these technologies to deliver massive amounts of yield. But a lot of that is focused around leafy greens and herbs. And there's a couple of different drivers for that. One is that these companies are addressing a market need, and they are applying their technology to give the best outcomes and the best products to deliver to their customers. But to really address the full potential of controlled environment agriculture to help deliver food security worldwide, particularly in developing nations, we're going to have to deliver more than just leafy greens. And anyone who was here for Howard Yarn Shapiro's talk this morning would have heard him mention that once we've addressed calorie deficiency, we still need to address mineral and vitamin deficiency. And a lot of the crops that can be adapted to these intensive horticulture systems can have a really high phytonutrient content. But there's a lot of work to be done to adapt, for example, a grapevine to grow in an indoor vertical system under artificial light. And this is an example of innovation at CSIRO that we've developed, which is a microvine, which is a dwarf grapevine. We have a number of different genotypes at the moment which have different phytonutrient and flavour and colour profiles. But the difference of this particular innovation is that these are a very small variety which can be grown hydroponically, and they can be either grown perennially and pruned, or they can be turned over each year. So it's just one example of pushing the system to grow beyond leafy greens. Question number 2, breeding for consumer-driven traits. And this links back again into this whole question of nutrients and feeding beyond calories. The classic example is the heritage tomato. So tomatoes that have been selected over many, many years for field production have had to meet a number of different requirements to allow us to achieve the yields that we need. So they need to be drought resistant, and they need to be disease resistant, and they need to be frost tolerant, and they need to be relatively sturdy to stand up to the transport and storage logistics. The beauty of a lot of these different technologies is that you collapse the supply chain. And so it allows you to start taking away some of those questions. So for example, if you're in a fully indoor system like AeroFarms, you don't need to think about drought and you don't need to think about frost, so you can start to think about flavour profiles and colour. And if you're in a rooftop system, you might still have to deal with the wider environment, but your supply chain is much, much shorter, so you don't need to think about storage and supply, so you can have a softer variety which has a different texture. So it just opens up a whole range of diversity which hasn't really been the focus of researchers up until now. Decreasing energy demand. So this is some data from a literature review that we did recently. And what was really interesting, pulling all the data together from a lot of different papers that have been released over the last 20 years, we found the proof that these sorts of systems can be astronomically productive. So you're talking several hundreds of times the yield per square metre. And they are incredibly water efficient. These vertical systems and greenhouses are using very little water to produce the amount of output that they're producing. But that all comes at the cost of energy. The further you go down controlling your environment, the more energy you have to put into the system to achieve those controls. And that might be in the LED lighting, it might be in the heating or cooling or dehumidification or pumping from nutrients. So there's a lot of excitement among researchers in a whole range of questions that can help to alleviate this. So it might be around managing them differently, connecting into renewable energy systems, things like the Internet of Things that Alina mentioned, are all ways that we can start to reduce those energy costs but keep the yield and water benefits. Number 4, phenomics and automation. So this is starting to get into the really techie space, which is bits outside my core science, but we have scientists within CSIRO who are really excited about using things like LiDAR to measure biomass using lasers, and hyperspectral imaging to start looking at nutrient content or disease or damage purely based on imaging. And these then can form the basis of both analytics in terms of measuring and tracking your crop, but also the automation that can go into meeting some of the labour needs, which are going to be hard to meet as labour becomes more scarce. And number 5, to round things out, crop nutrition and protection. As Alina mentioned, a lot of these fully indoor systems are proudly pesticide and fungicide free, and that is actually largely due to what we would call integrated pest management systems that they have. So it's not that these systems are magic, it's that they're very well managed for the systems that they are. One of the roles of researchers is to stay one step ahead, because we know that pest and disease management is really an arms race between us and the systems, and nature will find a way. So we need to be looking for the risks that these farms face and providing solutions that might be different to just spraying with the traditional chemicals. And that might be a biological solution, it might be a management change, but we need to be doing the foundational research so that the answers are there when the problem pops up. The nutrition question is really tapping into a lot of interest that is around circular economies and bioeconomies. So there's a lot of talk about how urban farms are close to where waste is produced, so we should be able to reuse those resources. But it's really not that simple. The logistics and cost of that is so great that it just isn't feasible, and a lot of people have tried for a long time. So research is needed to find innovative ways that we can actually capture the waste and transform it into a product that is actually going to be so beneficial that it is worth the energy and effort and cost of bringing all that waste together, processing it, and then taking it out, because it has to compete with bagged minerals, which are extremely cheap. So that's my top 5. If any of you want to approach us with your research questions, please do. CSIRO is always really keen to interact with industry and be answering your questions. So my name's Cathryn O'Sullivan. I can be your point of contact, so please bring all of your questions to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the whole panel, for amazing discussion. We haven't got any time for questions, but as I say, I really encourage you to reach out to everyone on the panel and come and have a chat afterwards.